Okay, I would like to welcome everyone to this week's edition of Belonging, which is Imperial as One's candid interview series with members of the BAME community. And this week, I'm really happy that we've got Kalpna Mistry who's going to be interviewed today. And she's the Staff Network Coordinator at Imperial College London. Kalpna, a lot of people have come in to see you, right? People who just don't normally turn up, right? Have tuned in today just because they know that you're on, right? I haven't got that kind of pulling power, so it's really good that um, you've come on with us today. And for today's, I'm going to just start off by welcoming you and ask you to
Thank
give us a
you.
little bit of a background of give us a bit of idea of your early childhood and what's helped you to get to where you are so far. All right.
Thank you, Wade, and thank you for inviting me onto the series and thank you to the audience here today. So a little bit about me. Wayne, as I told you the other day, I'm actually a northern lass, so from Manchester. I was born in Manchester, and so my very, very early years were spent there. And then at the age of about 8, we moved over to the other side of the world. We moved to Africa, to Zimbabwe. So that's where I continued to grow up, and a lot of my formative years, in fact, all of my formative years were spent in Zimbabwe. There was a little bit of time in between where we did return to the UK because my sister was born. Well, my mum was pregnant with my sister, and we came back here for her birth. But then we went back to Zimbabwe. So, spending time as a child here in the UK was very different to what it was out there. Here it was like you're surrounded by your family, your aunties, uncles, grandparents. So I picked up the language, the mother tongue, quite well, only to then go to Zimbabwe and sort of almost not forget it, but not be as fluent in it as I was before. But growing up in Zimbabwe, it was very sort of a privileged sort of a lifestyle, I would say, because um, we had everything at our disposal. We had people to take us to and from school. It's not like you run and get the school bus.
Yeah.
Well, there was that. It wasn't that there were no school buses, but because of the privileges we had mum or dad take us to school. Um, yeah, and it was like you could play out in the sun quite a lot. Um, I would say that the difference is also in the mentality of people. So, and the people that you know. So, um, in Zimbabwe, there's only one disabled primary school.
Right.
So when I went there, there was a bit of um, a waiting list to get into school. So for the first like few months, I didn't go to school in Zimbabwe. My brother did. I was jealous of that, but I had to be homeschooled.
Right.
So, yeah. But once I got into school, it was fine, and it's amazing. It was so different from my school here in the sense that there were people not just from the local area, but from all across Zimbabwe, because there is only that one school.
So,
And so there was a they had boarding facilities as well.
so how old were you when you went across to Zimbabwe?
Eight,
You were,
eight,
okay, and so
yeah,
for a few months you didn't go to school,
no, I
but
didn't.
when you were here, were you in mainstream school when you were here?
Again, it was a special school
Right.
for disabled children.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but it's fine. I mean, yeah. So in Zimbabwe, all my primary school was in a special school.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when I went to high school, it was different because there are no special high schools.
Right. Okay. So how did you find that transition into high school? What was that like for you?
It was actually better than I thought it would be. I was very scared, but I went to a government school, a girls' school, and they were really nice. Basically, so at the end of primary school, you write your grade 7 exams,
Right.
and I got good results for my grade 7 exams.
Yeah.
So when I went to when I went to high school, they did try and get me into a private school,
Right.
and I did have to write a lot of entrance exams for
Right.
private
Okay.
schools. But what I found was they were not putting the adjustment in place
Right.
when I went for the exam. So whether that was deliberate or they were just unaware of it, I don't know.
Yeah.
But so I didn't get into a private school.
Right.
Um, I went to a government school. The first few years I went to an all-girls school, and it was nice. And people did accept me for who I am. They could see all the physical differences. They could see where I needed help as well, and they would proactively help me out. I mean, for instance, in those days there was a lot of scribing.
Right.
So
Yeah.
the teacher would dictate and you would have to take down the notes.
Yeah.
And because of my disability, I can't keep up
Yeah.
with the note taking because it's really fast note taking.
Yeah.
So the way we got about it is either using carbon paper where one of the other girls might sit and take the notes in their book and carbon copy it will be
Wow.
carbon copied onto another piece of paper for me
Yeah.
and and we tried that and it was okay for one subject, but it didn't really work for the other 8 subjects.
Right.
So for the other 8 subjects, I thought, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to write in the book. So
Right. Okay.
what I would do is write and keep up as much as I can, but then at the end of the lesson, I would ask somebody if I could borrow their book. And as long as we didn't have homework in that subject that night, they'd willingly give me their book so I could take it home and write the notes out, what I'd missed out. So yeah, there were ways to get around it, or I'd ask somebody else, like my brother, if he wouldn't mind writing the notes for me, copying from the book.
I'm just sitting here thinking of the young Kelpner already honing her craft at negotiating and getting networks together, because I can see it there already. Can I just borrow your book, or can I connect you with somebody over here? I can see it already, Kelpner.
Thank you. But that's because I had no choice. I had to find a way that worked for me, and that was the way that worked for me. Another thing is, we used to go to school with a bookcase.
A bookcase.
A bookcase, not
Right.
a bag, not a satchel, an actual case that
Right,
you
okay.
carry, made of cardboard. And now, if you have like 8 different subjects, you have 8 notebooks and about at least 5 big textbooks in your bookcase. Those bags used to be, those cases were heavy, and the school was quite big, so one lesson would be at one end of the school, the other right at the other end, and you'd be carrying your suitcase. But again, people were nice, they used to carry it for me.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It sounds to me though, as though that, did you ever have any, I'm not going to say bad experiences, because it sounds from the description that people around you would, it wasn't that they, how can I put it? They saw where you needed help, and they were quite, it sounds as though they were willing to help you in whichever way they were. Was that from both the teachers and the students? What would you put that down to? Why was it that they were so willing to help, do you think?
I think it's the, that's a difficult one. I think, okay, maybe the teachers initiated it a little bit, I don't know. But also the people in Zimbabwe are they're quite warm in nature, and they're quite open, and they're quite giving people that give, and when they see people struggling, they help out. So I think it's just the nature of people in Zimbabwe, and that made it easier, because it's not only in school, but let's say I don't know, walking in town in Zimbabwe, no, because of the nature of my disability, I can't climb up big pavements, and sometimes the pavements there, they are quite big, but people again would stop and say, do you need some help? Can we help you? So I think, I think that happened here as well. To varying degrees, but especially on the tube, I found that people are very considerate.
Right, brilliant. So it sounds to me that you did most of your schooling in Zimbabwe.
All of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
When did you make the transition from Zimbabwe back to the UK? Because you were a Manchester lass, as you said. So when did you come back from Zimbabwe to the UK, and how was that transition for you?
So basically, after my A levels, there wasn't really much out there in Zimbabwe, because we've got the University of Zimbabwe, but they only take like the really, really, really clever students who get straight A's.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, whether I wanted to go into higher education or
Mm-hmm.
what. And at the same time, things were getting a bit difficult in Zimbabwe, and people were starting to send their children away. So my parents said, well, why don't you go back to England and just um try and find something there. You
Mm-hmm.
know, either do a course or find a job or something like that. So I thought, okay, that's what I'll do.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's when I came over to the UK basically.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but having left the UK as a child and then returning as an adult,
Yeah.
it's a very different
Yeah.
world
Yeah.
altogether. Yeah,
So
yeah.
how did you find that? Because you probably had your child. Did you in the interim time between when you left? I know you came back for your sister's birth, right?
Yeah,
But had you come back and forth, or had you mainly stayed in Zimbabwe?
mainly stayed in
Mainly stayed in
Zimbabwe.
Zimbabwe. So when you came back, right, as an adult, a grown woman, how was your perception different of the UK compared to when you had left? Was there a big difference?
So I think people initially, I thought people were more reserved. They keep to themselves. It's sort of bureaucratic. So
Mhm.
it's not as simple as, you know, you're looking for a job and you hand in your CV. There's some places where you have to actually fill in huge applications just to get a job. And yeah, it was like very different, and the whole tube system in the UK as well. It was intriguing definitely. And yeah,
Yeah,
so so then I did start trying to look for jobs, and I wasn't really getting anywhere.
mhm.
And so I um
Well,
I,
when you say you wasn't getting anywhere, how do you mean? At what stage you were putting applications in? What was happening? Was it that you
well,
explain that process of your job hunting, your job seeking? What was happening there?
okay. So what was happening there? So sometimes I would put applications in. I mean, sometimes I found it really shocking that they asked for so many details just to apply for a basic admin job. Sometimes I would write a letter and post it with my CV. And in the letter, I would always mention that I do have a physical disability, but I am interested in the post, and you know, these are my skills.
Yeah,
And then I'd get the rejections, or sometimes when I did apply, I did used to fill in huge application forms. And yes, I actually used to get quite a few interviews
yeah,
as well.
hmm
Um, Once I learned how to fill in the application forms
yeah,
properly, and what it was that they were looking for in the applications, I used to sort of tailor my experience to what they were looking for
yeah,
and send it off. And yes, they would can't wait for the interview. And I used to be a bit surprised that they calling me for the interview because the application was handwritten.
Right. Okay.
And my writing is worse than a 5-year-old.
That's okay. Keltner, I don't believe that.
It is. It is.
Okay. But you still got the interviews, and at the
Yeah.
so how did you manage to get this job at Imperial then?
So basically, because I couldn't get a job, I was getting a bit disheartened, and so I did a couple of courses like NVQ in business administration and that, and then I ended up as part of that. I ended up doing work experience firstly for a charity, and then I moved over to the Citizens Advice Bureau. So I was doing a lot of work for the Citizens Advice Bureau, and then I decided, you know what, I want to study further.
Right.
So I was studying for the ACCA qualification,
Mhm.
and that's quite difficult. You have to write exams. In those days, it was every 6 months.
Wow.
Every June and every November, you could write your ACCA exam. So for a few years, that's what I was doing, writing these really difficult exams,
Mhm.
and and working at the Citizens Advice Bureau.
Okay.
And then it just so happened that one year I'd finished writing my exams, and I thought, you know what am I going to do the rest of the summer
Yeah.
while I'm waiting for the results? I could maybe look for a part-time job.
Mhm.
And so I did that, and I looked at these job sites, these two different job sites, because in those days I'd looked to see whether an organisation had the two tick symbol or not before I applied, and
Well,
um,
what do you mean by the two tick symbol?
two tick symbol is it used to be. It used to show that an organisation was positive about employing disabled people.
Right.
So it's no longer in existence.
Right.
It's been replaced with the disability confident standard,
Right. Okay.
which Imperial do have.
Right.
Um, so Imperial didn't have a two-tick symbol, but yet on the job boards that I was looking at, which were race-related and disability-related, they had put this job out, and I looked at the job description, and it looked really, really
Right.
interesting.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, so that's why I applied, um, and then I got the job.
How did you? So you applied, got the. Did you feel? I'm trying to think of the words. How was that whole process for you going for the job? Were you excited? How did your family and everybody react when you got the news that you were going to be working at Imperial? What happened?
Well, I think deep down they were pleased, but there was a bit of concern as well. It's far away. It's nowhere near where we live. And yeah, that's okay. I don't mind. Oh, trouble. So I started off at Imperial on a part-time basis as the ED Equality and Diversity Administrator, and then I did that and then my role did develop from there.
Mhm.
So I started doing the budgeting, which I don't do that anymore, thankfully. But I started doing the budgeting, looking after the childcare vouchers as
Mhm.
well.
Mhm.
Um, then later on, I went on to do training
Mhm.
and deliver training and develop policies and guidances
Mhm.
as well. So my role now is very different from what it used to be before. It's more to do with the development of policies. It's more to do with uh, networks,
Yeah.
hence
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
title,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's more to do with sort of coaching and advising
Mhm.
as well. So
Mhm.
especially disability advice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How would you say? I'm putting you on the spot here. Would you say that from the perspective of a person with different abilities,
Yeah.
that Imperial is a good place to work, or could there be improvements? Or how? If I'll just do the first question. Is it a good place to work for someone with disability? Would you say?
I think it is a good place to work for somebody with a disability. I think there is a lot of goodwill at Imperial with certainly if you look at the top, our leadership, they
Mhm.
do want change, they do want to do the right thing, and they do want to create an inclusive environment. You
Mhm.
know, inclusivity is fundamental to Imperial, and if we think about the word belonging, another word for belonging is inclusivity, because it's about your experiences, and in wherever you are, do you feel that your needs are being met? Do you feel that you're being heard? Do you feel that you can work to your maximum capacity
Mhm.
and um,
Mhm.
and contribute
Mhm.
the best way that you can?
Mhm.
You know, I think certainly Imperial is getting there to some degree. I think I'm not gonna lie, there are pockets of not so good practice,
Mhm.
you know, but in the main,
Mhm.
managers are are willing to put adjustments in place for people,
Mhm. Mhm.
or or to find out how to do so. Yeah.
There's a word that came up a couple times, which was um, adjustments, reasonable adjustments. You
Mm.
said it from when you were at school that the schools, the children and the teachers made adjustments. When you were out, people would make adjustments. So, in terms of making reasonable adjustments going forward, what kind of adjustments would you still like to see made um, to help people with disabilities to be to feel as though they belong more at Imperial? What would be your top two or three?
Top two or three adjustments that I would still like to be made. That's a difficult question to answer, and especially given that the adjustments that people need are so varied and so different,
Yeah.
but certainly, I think advancement in technology is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So, just to improve technology and um, certainly more flexibility,
Right.
that's another one.
Yeah.
So we have areas where there's good flexibility and
Mm-hmm.
areas where people are not so flexible
Mm-hmm.
and they have this rigid way of working, and the expectation that people work all hours of the day just to get the research results so that we can get the funding, etc. So that shifting culture, I think one of the adjustments, I would say the biggest adjustment that people need to make is the adjustment to their attitudes
Okay.
towards disabled people,
Okay.
towards differences. So just change your attitude to a more accommodating attitude.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's an excellent answer.
And try and put yourself in the shoes of that other person as well, and see things from where they're coming from rather than from what you think it should be.
Mm-hmm. So I was just wondering, would you like to see, because I remember when we spoke with Lisa last week, and one of the things that she was saying was about a dialogue, having a better dialogue. Do you think we talk about disabilities enough and the needs that people with disabilities have? Do you think as a community we're as aware as we could be, and how could we make that awareness better if that's the case?
How can we make that awareness better? I think dialogue is good.
Yeah.
It sort of raises the awareness, but there has to be a purpose to dialogue. You can't just have, oh, let's talk about disability just for the sake of talking about it. That the end point, we have to define the end point. Why are we talking about it? Is it because we really and truly care about it? Is it because we want to make the organization better? In which case, when we do our dialogue, can we have ideas of how we make the organization better? So dialogue is great, but it needs an objective to it.
I like that. Dialogue is great, but we need an objective. So it's not talk for the talk's sake. It,
Yeah, yeah,
it it's talk with a purpose and action.
absolutely.
We want to see change. We don't just want to talk about change. Yeah. You're an
Yeah.
activist as well, not only a collector. You're an activist, aren't you? Listen, I'm looking at the time. I'm just going to open up to the audience. It's been great. I've got loads of more questions, but I'm going to open up and see if there's anyone else who would like to ask any questions. Otherwise, I've got a few others which I wouldn't mind putting forward. So is there anyone else who would like to ask a question at this point? If you want to raise your hand.
Oh, thank you, Dawn.
Dawn sent you a private message. Okay, no
Yeah.
problem. Right. Okay, so we've spoken about wanting to see actions. It's not just good enough to talk. Can I ask, this is a slightly more personal. Has there ever been a time where you felt that you didn't necessarily have that sense of belonging because of the way that you have been treated?
Yeah, I think there had been times. Sometimes even if I go to some shops, they they don't address me as the customer. They address the person that I'm with. So I'll give you an example. One time I was with my nephew. He's a little boy, and we went up to the counter to pay for his hot dog, or to order his hot dog, and and he's quite fussy. He wants a hot dog, but without the roll. without the bread.
Yeah.
So we're trying to explain this to the guy behind the counter and say, well, look, you know, can we have the sausage without the bread? Yeah. And the guy's just looking at me, and then he looks at my nephew and he starts speaking to my nephew and saying, what do you want? And wait a second, I've just told you, and now you're disregarding me and you're asking a little child.
Yeah.
So there is that sort of occasional mistreatment because they're not sure um what what to what to expect of me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes I have to sort of speak a little bit slowly and reassure people because they're not so willing to listen to me. You can see it in their eyes. It's like, oh, she's talking to me, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether she's okay up there or not.
Yeah.
And then so you have to make that extra bit of effort to to sort of engage with them and reassure them that no, what you're talking about is logical, it is sensible.
Mhm.
Don't be deceived by the physical appearance,
Mhm.
the wobbliness, the unsteadiness. They seem to sometimes confuse the physical appearance, my wobbliness, and all of that
Mhm.
for a learning
Disability.
disability.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is annoying
Yeah.
sometimes, but you know, there's ways to get around
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I totally understand what you're saying there in terms of people being almost not fooled, having preconceived ideas because of
yeah,
what they see, and they think, okay, yes, there's no real need to listen or whatever. What can they contribute? Um,
yeah,
and and the thing about it is that disabilities come in different forms. I remember had a student once who, on the outside, they looked absolutely, nothing looked wrong with them physically, but yet um, they had a condition which meant they couldn't retain any information for long periods of time.
yeah, yeah,
Okay, and looking at them, I know until they told me, and because they hadn't disclosed it beforehand, until they told me, I was making the assumptions that, and so I think, yeah, I was making the assumptions that everything I said that they would keep up with, not knowing that I should be making reasonable adjustments, yeah, to
yeah.
accommodate the different needs which that individual had, yeah.
Mm, mm,
So
mm.
I'm just thinking about, um,
And it's about, I mean, it's about just expecting that all the students would have different needs and trying to sort of, you know, pre-foresee their needs and
mhm,
trying to think, okay, this is how I've normally done things, but if I did get a student with processing differences or with memory problems, memory conditions, how could that student be accommodated?
mm,
You
mm,
know, and trying to just um anticipate, should I
mhm,
say, anticipate that you will get those sorts of students, and therefore looking at, well, the material you deliver, how can it be delivered to a diverse audience who have differing needs?
mm,
And so
Yeah.
It could be that you put materials up on Blackboard or whatever platform it is beforehand, and you do it not just for that student but for everybody.
Yeah.
And that might help. And just also just be open and let students know that if they have any needs or difficulties, that you're there, you're available for them to come and talk to you. And then listen to what they're saying as well. Listen to what they're saying that they want, because a lot of times students with such processing differences, they normally have strategies and they know what works for them, and not all of them know, but some of them do, some of them might not know, and if they don't know, that's fine too. We can figure it out together. We can involve the DAS, the Disability Services at Imperial for students. Yeah. And you just put in the adjustment, see if it works. If it doesn't work, try something else, because that's the thing with adjustments. Just because it's recommended doesn't mean it'll work straight away. Sometimes it takes a bit of time for the person to get used to the adjustment, and then it works, and other times it doesn't really work at all. So it's it's try and error.
Yeah, I like what you've said there in terms of actually we need to spend a bit more time getting to know each other and to understand the individual needs, as opposed to making assumptions that I know what that person's needs are and they have to fit into whatever provisions we already have. So it's them fitting into our provisions instead of us making the provisions open enough for to accommodate or to make the adjustments which will enable them to feel welcome in that particular activity. I've just seen a hand fly up, so I'm gonna just go over to
now,
go ahead.
Well, sorry, me.
Yeah.
Right. Sorry about that. I'm in the middle of something. But Kalpna, thank you very much for sharing your story. As I've always said, right from the first day I met you, you are so good to me, and you're always supporting everything I was doing with your group.
I'm happy to support you, Sunday.
I know I'm not
really good to see you.
I know I'm not as active as I used to be for many reasons, because we need to get other people to take on the baton and run with it. But my question to you, if you become the president of Imperial tomorrow for a week, say, you're now appointed as the president for a week, what one thing would you like to see, or will you as a president implement within Imperial College to make the life of people like you far from easy, incredible, happier, and continue to work at Imperial? Tell me.
Well, if I was the president of Imperial, what one thing would I implement to get people to feel included? I think that what would be the one thing? So I think the one thing I would do is I would start a channel, like the Belonging channel, and what I would do is I would get people to post videos on that channel of good practice of what they and their manager have done to get them to feel included? What adjustments have they put in place? How has the probation process been for them? You know, and if it's a good story, then post it on that channel, and then maybe have it so that it's a competition between the faculties and the department. In the last 3 months, the Department of Medicine have put up, I don't know, 20, 30 stories, but the faculty of, let's say, engineering have only put up 5. What's going on? So, and also have an open door policy with myself and my senior leaders, whereby people who feel that they're not getting things met, or processes are not being followed as per policy and guidance, and it could easily be done so, they could come and drop in and see us. So I would have drop-in sessions as well as you know, that whole video thing where people can post, and then we have a review of, and sort of make it a competition between departments and say, you know, do it like that.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that. Imperial has won. Now that's a challenge for you. You need to take what Kalpna have just said and make sure the current president action that before Kalpna becomes the president.
Well,
Kalpna, you inspire me every morning because you walk past my window every morning. And when I'm in office before now, I see you, although they can't see me, I always wave at you every morning.
I'll look out for you next
Okay.
Sunday.
All right.
That's fantastic. Thank you for the question. Kalpna, it's been fantastic hearing your story.
Thank you.
Absolutely brilliant. And I do like your ideas. I like the idea about having that open door policy and having the videos, the video competition. But the competition wasn't the important part. I think the important part was the development of good and sharing of good practice, of how have you made each other feel included. I think that's a brilliant idea. Absolutely brilliant idea. So I think that would be something, or even though you said that you hadn't been thinking about it, I think if that's what you can do when you're not thinking about something, wow, what's going to happen when you do start thinking about stuff? Wow. So, Kalpna, it's been, as I said, it's been wonderful having you on and to gain some insight into your experiences. So thank you very, very, very much for sharing.
It's been a pleasure being here, Wayne. Thank you. Thank you for calling me.
No, we had to have you on. You're our go-to person, and you can understand why, right? Brilliant. Okay, I'm gonna just quickly share a slide for advertising what's gonna be on for next week. So next week we're gonna have Jamar Samuels, who's a BAFTA award-winning film director, an activist, artist, and an academic. And so she'll be sharing her story about some work which she's done and is doing, and her sense of belonging. So if you've missed any of the other videos or any of the other interviews, you can go to our YouTube site at tinyurl.com, belonging IAO, and you can of the back catalogue. But once again, I want to say a big thank you. Thank you to Kalpna, and thank you to everyone who's come this week. It's been really great. It's been a really good interview today. So thanks again, and we will see you all very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.